Hello, everyone. Welcome to eBizChat, where it's all about business. My name is Rick Zanotti, and I'm joined by... The music just kicked in. Well, she gets music. Isn't that great? Anyway,
Yay!
I am joined by my good friend and co-host, Susan Nash, Dr. Susan Nash. How are you, Susan?
Good. It's really cold today, but it's also getting close to Valentine's Day, and I'm really excited about that.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yes.
It's not snowing out there, is it?
We had a tiny bit of snow. We had
Okay.
ice. And we're supposed to get a lot more, but it's cold. It's winter. It will change.
I won't tell you what our temperature is in, so we'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
For us, it's cold, but that's not cold. This is typical
How cold?
Southern. Now we're 64 right now, and that's during the day.
That's nice.
At night we're in the 40s, 48, 45, which is chilly for here. People in Southern California are running around with parkas at 40 degrees. They're dying. They don't know real cold. Anyway, in studio, we've also got Harold Muliati. He is our video producer. And let's go.
More and more people are working remotely every day. Your company may already be remote. You may be new to working remotely, whether you're a worker or a manager. Working remotely has some challenges and some very good points to it as well. In our training, we'll make sure that you learn how to work remotely, how to build trust, how to do all the things that make remote working successful. And we'll also talk about some of the pitfalls and what to avoid. Working remotely for workers and managers. It's our new course on Udemy. Thanks.
This show is sponsored by Relay Corporation, digital learning, corporate video, learning design, and management consulting. Visit us at www.relatecasts.net. Thanks.
And we are back, and in that center position of power, we've got Pushpesh Sharma. He is with Inveniam and Inveniam Funds, and he will be our guest today. And tell us a little bit about what you do, Pushpesh.
Hi, Rick. So thank you so much for having me here.
Our pleasure.
At Inveniam, our goal is to innovate data-driven solution to help increase the visibility and transparency in energy investments. So that's in short, that's our goal.
Now, you work a lot with, from what I saw on the website, you do a lot of analytics, you do data analysis, but part of the company name is funds. Do you do funding, or do you just analyze investments?
So the company's co-founder, she had a background she worked with a lot of investment management firms, and she was a portfolio manager before. So the idea of the fund, the company initially was to be a consulting firm and help people who are trying to invest in energy, or so it was like a over encompassing kind of term to have Inveniam Fund in the name. But nowadays we are trying to go towards more Inveniam research, because it's more about finding out different trends. But the website still remains Inveniam Funds though.
That's good.
So that's interesting. So I was really impressed with the work that you did earlier in the year when we were talking about machine learning, and then also you were putting together workshops that had to do with analytics. And so I'm just wondering, right now that you're doing research, is any of the research based on machine learning algorithms?
Yes, everything. That's one of the focus points right now. What is happening in energy, right? That what we felt out there is there are a lot of tools out there which will give you the data, but not how to deal with the data. So what we are trying to do is to get the data from different sources and combine our machine learning algorithms. And we are working on different forecasting algorithms, and we are working on different geospatial algorithms. So one of the biggest problem in oil industry is picking a type curve. If you want to book certain reserves for a particular company, you have to guess that how much their new wells are going to produce. They do that by picking a type curve. So, which is, it's a very statistical exercise if you do it right, but normally you don't get the access to the data. So, what we are trying to do is to create like a geospatial model where you will bring in geology and latitude and longitude and different production parameters, and then try to estimate what will be a particular type curve for a energy firm. So that will help you get to a good number in terms of what their future is going to look like. So
So, what do you see the future right now in oil, for example, as opposed to? Are you looking at other energy sources too, or is it primarily at this point oil, gas?
so we started with all oil and gas related commodity market
Mm-hmm.
mostly, but post COVID, because the oil industry suffered the biggest, I guess,
Yeah.
from the COVID,
Mm-hmm.
after the COVID. So post COVID, we started looking into, because some of the methodology that we created was related to how do you evaluate a certain company based
Mm-hmm.
on connecting the operational parameter with the financial parameters. So the same methodology can be applied to healthcare or any other field.
Oh,
So
interesting.
what we started looking recently into, like, healthcare companies, because they have their own operations, and then that can be related to financial parameter, and then you can do the same forecasting for a healthcare company. So we started looking into diversifying our company into that sector also.
Well, that's interesting. So, when you started doing the development, you kept it pretty open-minded as far as are these the machine learning algorithms that you're using that basically can be used in almost any environment?
Yeah, basic algorithm stays the same, but suppose in oil and gas, the main parameter will be production, how much production is coming out of the
Mm-hmm.
well. But in a healthcare environment, you can pick another, like clinical trial, frequency of clinical trial, which will give you the similar kind of answer. It's not exactly one to one fit, but you can do certain changes, but the flow and the algorithm still stays the same. And you, by some effort, you can do the forecasting for any kind of sector if you can pick out the similarities between different sectors.
Nice.
You know, what's interesting to me is that essentially what you're dealing with, at least as you described it before, is the problem of sparse data. And that how do you predict when you don't have enough data? And so in the case of oil and gas, you fill in the blanks by looking at the rocks themselves and the reserves. And that's I really like that approach.
No, I think in sparse data is a very good point, and it's not only sparse. And another problem that we saw is like frequency matters a lot, because you have different kind of sources. One data source is available every second, another data source is available every month, and then third one, like the financial data, is available only quarterly. So that it's not only sparse, and it's very infrequent and different frequencies. So the challenge was to come up with a way to how to use all different kind of frequent data into a certain model. So that was one of the part of the challenges, to create databases based on to handle these challenges, and then how do you fill in the gaps, both in terms of variables and both frequency.
Yeah, the gap filling requires a lot of assumptions. You have to essentially train your model pretty well and have some faith that what you're using is actually going to lead to a good outcome. And how do you test that? How do you test the integrity?
So the biggest part of testing is, normally we expose a certain data to the model, and then we'll leave some data aside, like which test data kind of. So you'll you'll use the data for training set, and then you'll create a model out of that, and then you'll leave some data aside for testing later or validating your model. So then you can use that and see how your model is behaving with what you already know. But oil and especially like financial models are a little bit tricky, because there is no maximum or minimum limits. It's like you don't know what is the limit of a share price going up or any other financial parameters. So there are different techniques in data science where you can handle the like unstationary data and non-stationary data, you can say. So where the standard deviation and mean is changing with time. So it's you cannot use the normal data techniques to handle that kind of data.
Now, when you first started the company, what motivated you to go into this particular field?
Oh, that's an interesting story because when I was in school and I joined the PhD program. I was working on a course called Introduction to Petroleum, and in that course we had to do some coding to build a simulator. And the professor of that course was impressed with what we did. It was a group project. So, but then he was working with Hess Corporation that time, and he left Hess and he went to Boston to work in Liberty Mutual. So he started into insurance companies. That's where he met my current partner, and she talked to him, and she's told like she needs somebody who knows a little bit about the techniques of reserve estimation, like petroleum engineering basics, and also a little about digital and data science technologies. So he introduced us, and through that way, she kind of encouraged me to explore this possibility more, and then we started. So I joined, and I started working on this.
That's great. What was your background? Was it in computer science or geology or?
No, chemical engineering.
Chemical engineering. I love it.
Oh, nice.
It's but normally like a lot of the, if you look at the older petroleum engineers, they are all chemical engineers,
Right,
and
right.
chemical engineers I think is in a very perfect like intersection point in
Yes.
terms of both like both technical and IT sector. So it's good.
I started out in
Done
chemical
good.
engineering. Yeah, chemical engineering is a good starting point. I mean, I changed my major along the way, but at any rate, I was thinking about that when you were saying, how did you get interested, and thinking about the future. And we're going to have to deal with so many ways of working with electricity. And like even when we look at in terms of oil and gas, I mean, that there's so many different government programs now to encourage people to convert gas at the wellhead or at the gathering system to electricity and do something with it rather than flaring it or even just putting it in the pipeline. How can analytics help with that?
I think the one of the main thing where like I don't remember who said it, but there is a quotation like if you want to change something, measure it first. So I think analytics right now especially with the flaring and environmental remediation right now at a step before analytics. They are in a place where they first have to figure out how to measure it properly. And there are a lot of problems are happening right now where a lot of techniques are out there for methane emission and flare, but it's not a good estimation right now. So the companies can get away with like flaring a lot of volume without nobody finding out that how much they've flared. So once they do that measuring part, then there is a metric you can like figure out metric like the regulatory bodies can come up with metrics and then people can create models, and then it will be like, because there will be a penalty and it will be a measurable quantity. So then I guess the change will come. So similarly, like in other fields, once you start measuring the impact in measurable quantity, then the impact sees. I think so. For flaring, we also started looking at the data, and most of the data that we found online was satellite images where you can see the heat sensing, and based on the temperature of the heat signature, you can see this is the amount of flaring it's happening. But it's still a developing technology.
Well, I was also thinking about once you start working with companies to say suggest a generation, an electricity generation solution for their flares, then where they're flaring or the excess gas, then it becomes a question of like, okay, how much electricity are they able to produce? Where does it go? You know, like you're saying, first you have to know how much, but then you can think about what you can do with that. If there's no pipeline, do you just create an on-site server farm and use the electricity that way? I don't know.
No, I think that's a very good point, and that's why people are looking into electrical fleets for pumping. So right now, pumping is all diesel driven or like all fossil fuel driven. So if you start generating electricity on the wellhead, then you can use it to use in your frac fleet and in your drilling bits and all. You can just say that our lease is self-sufficient lease or green lease. So whatever energy we require to run this lease, suppose you have 100 wells in a lease, so the company can come out and say that we require this much energy to run this lease, and everything is completely sustainable. We produce the energy and we use the waste energy to power our equipment. So it can be a very good like social thing for companies to come out and say that we are doing that, and it can right now like ESG a very big deal. So I think it will give a lot of social credits to oil companies at least, especially.
Now, in the work you do, are you dealing more with already established companies? Do you work with new companies getting into the field? Or I guess right now there's with the economy, it's not probably finding a ton of new companies, but who's your target market when you actually provide services?
So target markets, the bigger target is the investment companies, investment banks, or then second will be the commodity forecasting people who invest in commodity.
Okay.
So if they want to see the forecasting model for a commodity, and then another added benefit is like the companies who doesn't have a lot of infrastructure, like smaller operators who don't have infrastructure to develop their own data analytics capabilities. So we can provide a tool to them so they can use, instead of hiring people and developing their own technology from scratch, they can use our resources to analyze their data.
Got it. Okay. So you're taking it more from the financial analytical end up front. And so that also helps investors. So in essence, you become a tool not only for the oil companies or the power companies, but also for the investors.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
The actually main focus was to first initially we started developing the product was more focused toward investors, and then we added more tools to make it approachable for other people also. But the main idea still remains like focusing on investing strategies.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
So, what do you think about Robinhood and Gamestop and all those types of crazy volatile fluctuations? Have you thought about using your tools for getting into the market, especially highly volatile markets?
Oh, we thought about it. This is like more about like getting on top of all the social media and trying to get there are tools out there you can do sentiment analysis and you can find out whether some sentiment is changing. But the tools that we have right now is not sufficient to do that kind of trading, because even like when we talk to investors, they are very suspicious of, because I think that was the whole idea about the GameStop and Reddit dispute was the general public was thinking that the institutional investors are not thinks that normal investors are dumb and they don't know what like institutional investors knows everything and normal investors are dumb. So they just went into revolt. But it's kind of hard when we talk to investors. I see the same logic. They are scared that if anybody can buy some stock on Robinhood, then whatever models anybody creates, eventually it will fail. There is no way you can predict it. So it's going to be an interesting problem. How I think social media will drive a lot of investment after this point.
Yeah.
Well, it was sort of funny because the market is somewhat gamed, and by the companies that were complaining about what happened to them when they figured they could drive GameStop out of business, and they didn't. So immediately, what was it, a week or two? Now they changed all the rules so that they get benefited again. It's just sort of funny. It didn't quite turn out well for anybody, actually. But I think they sent a good message to them that we know what you're doing, we know how to stop you, and they're not going to stop. I think the Robinhoods and all the people on those will probably continue doing this because they resented the fact that there were so many, what was it? Not stops. Well, I guess buys or
funds, the
sell shorts,
Oh yeah.
Shorts.
and
Yeah.
they
Naked
resented that.
shorts,
They go, "Hey,
yeah.
we like this company. Why are you trying to bring it down?" So they brought it up, and all of a sudden, the giant hedge funds are starting to go near bankruptcy. It was an interesting exercise, and I think it was quite telling too. It was actually kind of fun watching the screaming. Oh, look what they're doing to us! And like they said, that's what you do to us. So there's not much difference. So
It's like social media revolution in a way.
Yep, very interesting.
But you think about it, should you really be able to buy so many, like, okay, absolutely naked shorts, like you have nothing covering, and then buy more than that's even been issued by the company? I mean, there's something that kind of like it becomes almost like a postmodernist exercise in absurdity.
Yeah. It is, but it's like it's an experiment that people ran, I guess, and now the big hedge fund also knows this is possible, so they will be they will be wary of it now, I guess.
Yep.
But you invest in commodities, or you advise for commodities. Does that include silver?
No, right now
Oh,
you're
okay.
focused on more oil and gas related, so oil, gas, and NGL mostly.
Okay.
So
So what?
what do you see as the
Yeah, go
future?
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go. I was saying we asked the same question, so
Yeah,
synchronicity.
what do you see as the future for oil and gas right now? There's so many people stupidly against oil and gas, but I say stupidly because they have no clue what they're talking about. But what do you see as the future? Because there's a lot of negative publicity on oil and gas. And again, like I always tell people, do you like your iPhone? Do you like your TVs? Do you like without oil and gas? You won't have any of that. You like plastic? They don't think about that. But what do you see as the future? Do you think anything's really going to change, or is it just noise?
No, I think that's a very good point that you made. Like everything around you is coming from oil and gas product mostly.
Yeah.
Even electricity, even if we go to electricity-driven car, it's mostly produced through natural gas. So you're not gonna replace the industry. So there is no point of making a villain out of them and like make them look bad, because whatever we're gonna achieve, the oil industry has to be an active partner in that. Even if like the ESG goals or environmental goals that we have to make, then oil companies are going to be the driver. So, but right now, I think the change is happening. A lot of oil companies are realizing that it's in their mission statement that they are trying to reduce emissions.
Okay.
So oil industry will become, I think, more sustainable, and probably like the liquid fluid, meaning oil, gasoline consumption will go down, but you'll have always need natural gas, and you'll always need polymer production, so you'll always need petrochemical. So there is no like the future is there, but maybe not in the same way, right, as it's applied right now.
Now, what do you think about? I've been reading a little bit about Tesla. You know, the original Tesla, Mr. Tesla, and what they're doing now with the 5G, where they're launching a lot of satellites into space. I forgot how many, 1,200 or maybe more than that, that are planned on being launched that will be able to generate power, they're saying, through 5G. That's one of the thoughts, one of the plans being talked about. How do you think that would revolutionize industry? There's a lot of talk that 5G is bad for you, bad for health. I don't know. They said that about 4G too, and I think we're all still alive and doing well. So I don't really know how bad or how good it is. There's just false data everywhere. But what do you think about 5G and power as a source?
I think 5G, it's like a normal continuation of the technology. So as you said, like when 4G came, people were scared of, a little bit like skeptical of 4G too. So I think it's a part of the same skepticism right now for 5G, but it's something we need, and the way everything is moving right now, the quicker, faster ways of transferring the data is going to be the key. And the more we are going to rely on machine learning and data analytics, the more faster transportation methods will need. So there is no denying 5G right now, and it's gonna come whether you like it or not, I think. But producing energy from 5G, that's something I'm pretty skeptical about right now,
Okay.
because it's more of idea, and I'm not sure whether they have done actual testing, or there's whether it's like feasible in a way. But it's a evolving field, I think, so we'll probably
Yeah.
find out.
Yeah, that's true. We don't really know. And we don't know exactly what we'll be seeing in terms of new ways to do energy storage. To me, that's the big breakthrough. Once we can figure out a way to keep away from lithium, rare earths, all those different things where there are just a handful of deposits in the world, if we can start having energy storage in like everyday compounds, that would be amazing.
What about nuclear? As far as energy, some countries are using nuclear pretty well. We're not, at least not that
France,
much.
yeah.
France, other companies in Europe. I think even the Russians are using nuclear in some places. Nuclear has always been interesting, and the big problem is waste. But some places have waste pretty controlled, much better than we do.
They recycle too.
And they recycle some of it. What do you see as a future for nuclear? In terms of moving ahead?
Nuclear, that there is some safety concerns about nuclear. That's the only place where so wherever there is a history of like earthquakes, so I think people won't apply nuclear that easily there. But I like what Susan was saying. Like, I was reading research in Utah where they are trying to store energy in underground now in the oil wells. So they will heat up the water and they will inject it into a water drive inside the reservoir, and then they leave the water there. And whenever they need the energy, they will use it. So instead of using rare earth-based batteries, they will use the underground sources of reservoirs for battery. Yeah.
That's clever.
Yeah,
And,
I think they're.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I think I'm glad you mentioned that, because that kind of new type of geothermal, essentially, it's just all about collecting every single kilocalorie of energy that's generated and not wasting anything.
Yeah, and geothermal is going to be a very easy transition for oil industry also. So when we talk about future and sustainability, that's another another way where oil industry can actually contribute. So they will be the driver of geothermal also, because they already know everything about subsurface, and they are already doing a lot of things that geothermal needs. So they will drive that also, I think.
Yeah, if I were advising future geologists, I would say learn about the geothermal, but integrate with as much as you can of like generating electricity, understand electricity.
Yeah.
Well, that music means we are near the end of the show. Pushpesh, if people want to get a hold of you, what is the best way to do that?
Just connect me on LinkedIn, and then I'm normally very active on LinkedIn, so that'll be the best way.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and what your company's doing. How long have you guys been in business?
I would say 2 years.
Great. We're just excited for you guys. I hope it does really well and it continues on the path you're on. It sounds really like you've got a lot of choices too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, you're welcome.
You guys are on a great path.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, if you want to get a hold of Pushpesh, his information will be below. And again, check him out on LinkedIn. And great up and coming company. Always excited to see companies come and do something good. So again, we will see you folks next week on eBizChat. Thanks for joining us. And again, Pushpesh, thanks for joining us as well. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Great show.
Bye-bye.